I want to welcome you back to the second day of BlackHat. So far, it's been a pretty good success. The problems we had at lunch will be, I am told, corrected. We'll have double the flow rate, whatever that means when it comes to humans. We'll see what that's all about today. But before we kick this off, I want to perform a little informal survey. How many people went to bed before midnight last night? We're all growing old. Okay, how many people before 2? Okay, that was maybe the sweet spot on the bell curve of partyage. How many people haven't gone to sleep yet? I see one guy back there leaning against the wall with a coffee in his hand. Cool. Okay, so you guys know before you leave today, you're supposed to give me some feedback so we can keep this guy tuned up and on track. So please turn it in. We give away some free admissions to future BlackHats out of random drawing. So it's not just all altruistic. We actually do give you some cash prizes, sort of. And how many people saw the Pony Awards last night? Yeah, what do you think? Do that thing again next year, right? Yeah, that was cool. Okay, so our next guest needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway, right? Bruce Schneier. It's become a security icon, and it's kind of funny because when any time a reporter asks me what I think of what Bruce has said, I just say what he said. He's so fantastically reasonable and well-spoken. He seems to summarize complex ideas and portray them in pretty simple terms, and I think that's a really important skill because the industry needs someone who can take what we do, compress it down, and convey it in a very simple, and logical manner that's kind of devoid of emotional swings. And so the work Bruce is going to be presenting today, I think, is really fascinating. On how the human mind perceives and values risk, can do risk trade-offs. And because of that, I'm going to sit in this room the whole time and watch Bruce. So come on up here, Bruce, and knock him down.
So I think if you're going to ask people how late they're partying, you need to normalize for time zone, right? Because if you're from Europe and you party till midnight, that's actually really good. If you're from California, less good. So I'm going to talk about the psychology of security. I sort of consider my career an endless series of generalizations. I recently started looking at the surround security. Is the mic gone? Is that better? They promised me. All right. We're not going to use the lavalier. We'll use. I'm going back to this microphone. Whoever you are. Okay, good. Okay, no problem. Hang on, just got to rearrange a little bit. So recently I've been looking at the context around security. I've done a lot of work in the economics of security and how security products and services fail to succeed in the marketplace for reasons that have really nothing to do with technology. And more recently, I've started looking at the psychology of security, how we perceive security and how we think about security and how we make security decisions. It's surprisingly, two things. One is there's a lot of stuff out there. There's stuff from brain science. They'll put people in MRI scanners and ask them security questions or put them in stressful situations and see what parts of the brain light up. There's a whole lot of psychological studies about risk and security and trade-offs and costs. I'm doing a lot of that here. There's an entire journal of risk studies put out by psychologists. Who knew? Right? There's evolutionary biology looking at how we as a species evolved to handle security threats. Because if you think about it, security is very fundamental to being alive, whether you're a single-cell organism or a higher mammal. And a lot of this is all coming together. And I think there's a lot for us to learn as security technologists about how the brain works and how security works. Because if you think about it, security is both a feeling and a reality. Right? And they're different. You could feel secure even if you're not secure. And, at the same time, well, I guess a different time, you can be secure even though you don't feel it. Right? In some sense, there are two different words. Right? Two different meanings of the same word. And that makes it hard. It makes it hard to talk about this. And what I'm going to talk about here really is just about the feeling of security. It has nothing to do with the reality. Right? Only about how we perceive security. Now, I've been saying for a long time, for years I've been writing this, security is a trade-off. Right? Fundamentally, I guess a good way to think of it is you're a security consumer. You spend something, like money, convenience, time, civil liberties, capabilities, and you get some security in return. Right? And the question to ask is it worth it? The wrong question is, does the security do any good? Because even if it does, you might not use it if it's not worth it. I mean, a good example is a bulletproof vest. Right? They actually work pretty well, but I'll lay odds that nobody in this room is wearing it. Maybe a couple of weirdos. Right? Not because they don't work, but because of the cost in money, in lack of fashion sense. It's not worth it. And that's true for home burglar alarms. That's true for invading Iraq. I mean, any security trade-off. Is the cost worth the benefit? Right? And people have a natural intuition about these trade-offs. Right? You make these security trade-offs every day. Right? In simple things, when you decide whether you're going, what kind of hygiene regime you're going to do in the morning, or whether you walk down this street or that street, or double lock your hotel room door in the night. Are you making these security trade-offs? And everybody does it. We do it dozens of times a day. Every species does it. Right? Imagine a rabbit in a field eating grass. The rabbit sees a fox. The rabbit's going to make a security trade-off. Should I stay or should I flee? And the rabbits that are good at that trade-off will tend to reproduce, and the rabbits that are bad at it will get eaten or starve. So you'd think that we, as a successful species on the planet, would be really good at these trade-offs. At the same time, we're hopelessly bad at it, and to me, that's what's interesting. And I'll sort of give you the short answer now. We humans are really, really good at making security trade-offs endemic to living in small family groups in the East African highlands in 100,000 BC. We're great at that. 2007 New York City, not so much. But, I mean, that's the quick answer. This will be the long answer. So there are 5 aspects of the security trade-off I'm going to look at. And these sort of places where we as humans might get it wrong. Right? We might misunderstand the severity of the risk. Right? If we think the risk is more or less than it actually is, we're going to get the trade-off wrong. The probability, and how likely is it to happen to us? If we get that wrong, we can get the trade-off wrong. We might get the costs wrong. We might under or overestimate the costs. Right? We might misunderstand the countermeasure. How good is it? Right? How good is that door lock? How good is that burglar alarm? Right? If we respond to a deceitful advertisement, we might get the trade-off wrong. And lastly, the trade-off itself. We just might make a bad trade-off even though we have all the pieces. So those are sort of the 5 things I'm going to touch on. All right, but first, so this is your brain on security. That little red thing is called the amygdala. The amygdala is one of the oldest parts of your brain. It first appeared in primitive fishes. And it is the part of the brain that controls the fight or flight. So things like sweaty palms and adrenaline and increased heart rate, increased muscle tension, all of that comes out of the amygdala. Actually, that's a lie. Whenever someone tells you this is the part of the brain where this happens, they are lying to you. I mean, basically, everything sort of tends to happen everywhere, but things also tend to be localized. So the amygdala is the place where that happens, but things also happen elsewhere. One of the things I'm going to do in this talk is convince you forever that your brain is nothing like a computer, not even a teeny tiny bit. I mean, things don't happen in this one place. But the amygdala is the seat of this fight or flight. It's interesting. It is a very, very fast part of your brain. It is faster than consciousness. If I show you a picture of something you have a phobia of, a snake, your amygdala will kick in before your conscious brain knows what it's seeing. Right? The amygdala is faster than consciousness. It can be overridden, right? I mean, one of the neat things about being a primate is we get a lot of other brain that can counteract this. But it's not easy. I mean, lots of research is done here by groups studying policemen and firemen and soldiers, trying to get them to basically to override their amygdala, to try to reason in a situation where basically their reptile brain is kicking in. A lot of studies done there. This is your neocortex, right? This is what you get because you're a mammal. Yours is nice and big because you're a human. The neocortex is the part of the mammalian brain associated with consciousness. So this is where thinking and reasoning happens. And you know, it's believed it first showed up because mammals and then primates had to deal with very complex social interactions. You also see it, big neocortex in some species of bats that have very complex social hierarchies. It is, like I said, the newest part of the brain. I mean, the way to think of it is it's still in beta testing, right? It works, as testament by all of us. The mic's down again. Are we good now? Yes. Someone in the back has to nod. No one in the back is nodding. Mike's. All right. All right. This will be fixed by sometime. Okay. This is the slowest part of the brain. Right? This is the part of the brain that will react last to things. And it's the part of the brain that's most computer-like, but it's also very much not like a computer. It uses a whole lot of, you see them called heuristics, right? Brain heuristics. Think of them as rules of thumb. Think of them as cognitive biases. Basically shortcuts. We don't have the full logical programming, but we tend to have shortcuts. We have lots of them. And they basically work. Right? And there are some basic ones. Right? When you see two dots in a line, you see face. That is a cognitive shortcut. Because seeing faces is important to us, so we quickly recognize them, and that will spill over to even recognizing things that aren't faces. And that's the way to think of these brain heuristics. They work really well, but they fail sometimes. And a lot of security problems happen when these biases fail. So here's some common sense about risks. And I've collected these from about 7 or 8 different sources. And it's how people exaggerate and downplay risk. I started writing about this in Secrets and Lies in 2000, and wrote about it in Beyond Fear, and this is an even bigger list. And I really wasn't understanding why we had these when I was writing that. I was just saying, here's what they are. Right? And there's some examples, right? We exaggerate rare risks and downplay common risks, right? Flying versus driving. We exaggerate risks against our children. And when you look at these lists, what's interesting to me about them is they basically make a lot of sense. Right? They're not weird. You can understand why we might exaggerate certain risks and downplay others. Of course we can exaggerate risks against our children because our children are our genetic offspring. So if we don't do that, we're going to have less children, we're going to die. Now, you're going to exaggerate the spectacular and rare. Just because you don't, your sense of probability at the